Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a message that could completely shift the way you live your life, from the inside out. We live in a world that never stops talking. Everyone wants to be heard, everyone wants to be seen, everyone wants to explain their story, defend their choices, justify their silence, or win every argument. But here's a radical truth that very few will dare to tell you. You don't owe anyone an explanation for the way you choose to protect your peace. In a time where validation is more valued than inner peace and performance is praised more than authenticity, the loudest voices often drown out the wisest ones. But not yours, not anymore. This video isn't about learning how to speak louder, it's about learning the true power of your silence. Because the world may crave your words, your reasons, your defense, but what it truly respects is your restraint, your stillness, your self-trust. You see, silence isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Silence isn't emptiness, it's control. And silence isn't avoidance, it's elevation. When you begin to master the art of not explaining yourself to everyone who questions your path, you reclaim energy, you preserve peace, and most importantly, you grow into a version of yourself that no longer needs approval to feel powerful. Because your growth doesn't need a narrator, your healing doesn't need validation, and your mission doesn't require audience applause to be worth pursuing. Today, we break free from the cycle of over-explaining, over-justifying, and oversharing. Today, we reclaim the quiet confidence that allows us to walk boldly and unapologetically toward the life we are building without seeking permission. This isn't about arrogance, it's about alignment. It's about knowing who you are, what you value, and where you're going, and refusing to waste another second trying to make others understand what only you were called to walk. So if you're tired of feeling like you have to convince others of your worth, if you're ready to stop giving away your power every time someone questions your boundaries, if you want to finally learn how to let your silence speak louder than their opinions, then you're in the right place. Because what we're about to unpack isn't just motivation, it's transformation. This is a mindset shift, a call to maturity, a reminder that in a loud, chaotic world, those who master silence will always stand tallest. Ladies and gentlemen, silence isn't something to fear, it's something to embrace. And when you learn how to use it, you won't just be respected, you'll become unstoppable. Let's begin. Silence is a power move. In a world addicted to noise, everyone wants to be heard, everyone wants to be seen, and everyone wants to be right. But the people who truly move the world forward, they understand something deeper, something quieter. Silence is a power move. Silence is not weakness, it's not the absence of something, it's the presence of control, of calm, of self-mastery. The truth is, when you stop rushing to explain yourself, when you stop feeling the need to prove your worth with words, you begin to reclaim your power. Because power isn't in how loud you speak, it's in how deeply you think, how intentionally you move, how confidently you sit with your truth without needing approval. Too many people feel the urge to fill every silence, defend every decision, argue every misunderstanding. But every time you try to explain yourself to someone who isn't listening to understand, you give a piece of your peace away. You waste your breath trying to convince people who've already made up their minds. And in doing so, you start to second-guess yourself, drain your energy, and lose focus. But silence? Silence doesn't beg to be understood. Silence doesn't seek applause. Silence commands respect. When you speak less, people start to lean in. They start to wonder what you're thinking. They start to notice what you're building. And more importantly, they stop taking your presence for granted. In fact, your silence becomes a mirror. It forces others to reflect. It makes them question. And in a world that thrives on instant reactions, the ability to remain silent is the ultimate act of emotional intelligence. You see, silence gives you space to respond, not react. It allows you to choose presence over pressure, to stay grounded while others spiral. Because here's the thing, you don't need to explain every boundary. You don't need to justify every step. You don't need to announce every move. Your progress, your growth, your evolution, it's yours. Let your silence be the canvas for your results. Let your actions be your answers. So next time you feel that itch to defend yourself, pause. Ask yourself, do I really need to say this? Or is my peace more valuable than their opinion? Because silence isn't passive, it's precise. It's not doing nothing. It's doing everything that matters most. Stay quiet, stay focused, let the noise pass, and let your discipline speak. That's the power of silence. You don't owe the world your story. You don't owe the world an explanation. Let that sink in. You don't owe anyone a detailed reason for your boundaries, your silence, your growth, or your choices. And yet, We live in a culture that expects it. The moment you go quiet, the moment you shift your energy or cut off what drains you, people start demanding answers. But here's the truth. You are not required to make your life make sense to anyone but yourself. You don't have to justify why you distanced yourself. You don't have to explain why you stopped texting back. You don't need to break down the healing you're doing or the standards you've raised. That's your personal journey, and it's sacred. The moment you start living for approval is the moment you lose alignment. And what good is being liked by everyone if it costs you peace with yourself? There comes a time when you realize that not everyone deserves access to your story. Some people are not safe with your vulnerability. They don't listen to understand. They listen to judge, to twist, to gossip. And when you open up to those kinds of people, you don't gain clarity. You lose energy. You end up second-guessing your growth, all because someone who doesn't understand your vision tried to put their lens on your path. Don't let that happen. You are allowed to grow without announcing it. You are allowed to heal in silence. You are allowed to evolve without reporting every step. That's not arrogance, it's protection. That's not secrecy, it's self-respect. The people who genuinely care about you, they'll notice the shift in your presence. They'll respect the boundary without needing a play-by-play. They won't question your distance. They'll trust your process. And those who don't, they were never really aligned with your truth to begin with. Sometimes silence isn't the absence of communication. It's a decision to communicate only with the right people. Sometimes the best way to honor your growth is to stop explaining it to those who aren't growing themselves. So here's your permission. You don't have to answer every why. You don't need to offer closure to everyone you've outgrown. You don't need to give a speech every time you walk away from something that no longer serves your peace. In fact, your silence might be the most honest thing you can give them, because silence says, I've made my choice. Silence says, I don't need to defend my evolution. Silence says, my peace matters more than your understanding. Let them wonder. Let them misunderstand you. Let them say what they will. You're not here to be understood by the masses. You're here to live in integrity, with your purpose, your values, your calling. Protect your story, honor your silence, and walk your path without apology. The loudest room is often the weakest. Walk into any room and pay attention. Who's doing all the talking? Who's constantly trying to prove a point, defend a position, impress an audience? Usually, it's not the strongest person. It's the most insecure. That's because true power doesn't announce itself. It doesn't need a microphone. It doesn't chase validation. Real power enters the room, stays centered, and lets presence speak louder than volume ever could. The loudest room is often the weakest, because noise is often a cover for confusion. People who talk constantly are usually trying to fill a void. They don't trust silence, because silence demands self-awareness. And when you aren't grounded in who you are, silence can feel like a mirror, and not everyone is ready to see their own reflection. But when you operate from strength, you no longer feel the need to constantly prove your worth. You no longer chase arguments, try to be understood by everyone, or rush to explain every move. Why? Because you know that stillness is more powerful than shouting. You know that calmness in chaos sends a stronger message than reacting ever could. It's not about staying quiet to be mysterious or superior. It's about understanding this. Every word you speak either builds your power or leaks it. And when you speak out of impulse, out of ego, out of the need to be seen, you weaken your impact. But when you observe first, when you respond intentionally, when you value your energy over your ego, you elevate your presence. That's what leaders do. That's what grounded individuals do. They speak only when it's necessary. They speak when their words carry weight. You don't need to be the loudest voice in the room to be heard. You need to be the most anchored. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is say nothing at all. Not because you're avoiding confrontation. No. Because you don't have anything to say. But because you've realized that your silence holds more authority than someone else's noise. In fact, silence can often be more uncomfortable to the insecure than any insult. Because they're expecting you to defend, to react, to engage. But when you give them nothing, they're left to face their own noise. And you remain unbothered. Don't underestimate the power of restraint. Don't overlook the value of observing first. You don't always need to add to the conversation. Sometimes your absence from it is your greatest contribution. Let your presence be felt without performing. Let your energy speak before your words do. And most importantly, remember, when you are rooted in who you are, you'll never need to shout to be heard. Energy is currency. Spend it wisely. Think of your energy like money in a bank account. Every interaction, every conversation, every explanation, you're either investing that energy into something meaningful or you're wasting it on what brings no return. Here's the hard truth most people ignore. Every time you explain yourself to someone who's already decided not to understand you, you pay a price. And what you lose is far more valuable than a few minutes of conversation. You lose clarity, you lose focus, you lose the emotional fuel you could have poured into your purpose. That's why silence is not just a boundary, it's a budget. You don't owe a response to everyone who questions your choices. You don't need to give emotional receipts for why you've grown, why you've moved on, why you're evolving. Because if someone's not paying attention to your actions, they're probably not worth the explanation in the first place. Energy is currency. And the truly successful people, the ones who build legacies, who move mountains quietly, they don't spend their energy explaining their discipline. They save it for the mission. You only get so much bandwidth in a day. You can either use it defending yourself to people who aren't building anything, or you can protect that energy and pour it into building something that doesn't require defending. Choose the latter. You don't need to clap back. You don't need to write a paragraph response. You don't need to attend every argument you're invited to. In fact, the more powerful you become, the less explaining you do, because your life becomes the evidence. Your consistency becomes the defense. Your results become your voice. Ask yourself, does this need my attention? Or is this a distraction dressed up as urgency? Is this a genuine connection or an emotional energy leak? Because the people who truly respect you won't require explodes. And nations, they'll respect your space. They'll honor your silence. They won't demand to be convinced. They'll choose to trust you or walk away. Both outcomes are peace. So let this be your new mantra. If it costs me my peace, it's too expensive. And explanations, they're expensive, especially when given to people who won't value them. So protect your energy like it's sacred, because it is. It fuels your growth. It builds your habits. It drives your dreams. And when your energy is aligned, disciplined, and protected, you become unstoppable. No noise, no opinions, no misunderstandings can derail someone who spends their energy with intention. Your silence is not a void, it's a vault. And what you're building in there, it's too powerful to be explained to those who can't see it yet. Success doesn't announce itself. Look around at the people who are truly building something great. The entrepreneurs, the artists, the visionaries, the disciplined few. You'll notice something powerful. They don't talk about what they're going to do. They just do it. Success doesn't make noise. It doesn't post every step. It doesn't explain itself to people who aren't walking the same road. Because the truth is, people who are genuinely growing don't have time to stop and constantly announce their process. They're too focused, too invested, too locked in. And that's what you must become. So focused on your growth that you don't need the world's applause to validate your path. You see, the more you feel the need to tell everyone what you're doing, the more you're unconsciously asking for permission. You're seeking confirmation that your path is right, when in reality, the only validation that matters is the one you give yourself. Let that sink in. You are allowed to grow quietly. You are allowed to win in silence. You are allowed to keep your goals sacred until they've taken shape in reality. Because people can't sabotage what they don't know. They can't criticize what they can't see. They can't tear down what you've built in the dark. And when it finally comes into the light, when the results are undeniable, you won't need to say a word. Your life will speak, your energy will shift, and your consistency will silence every doubt. There's an unmatched power in working behind the scenes. It builds humility. It sharpens discipline. It makes you dangerous in the best way, because you stop needing recognition to stay motivated. You begin to value peace over praise, progress over performance, alignment over attention. You learn to delay the desire to be seen, because what you're building is bigger than a temporary dopamine hit. It's lasting. It's foundati. Onal. It's transformative. And in a culture obsessed with showing off, being silent is a rebellion. It's how the legends operate. It's how the monks stay unshaken. It's how champions are made. Not in the spotlight, but in the shadows of discipline. So let others talk. Let them shout their plans to the world. You move different. You don't need to advertise every step. You just need to take them relentlessly, consistently, purposefully. And when your moment arrives, when all your quiet efforts finally bloom into visible results, you won't need to say, "I told you so." You'll simply walk in, calm and composed, and let your work speak volumes. Because real success doesn't need to announce itself. It's already loud enough in what it produces. Inner peace over outer approval. In a world where approval is currency, choosing peace over popularity is a radical act. Everywhere you look, people are chasing likes, validation, praise. They post, they talk, they explain, not to inform, but to impress, to be accepted, to feel seen. But here's the truth most people won't tell you. Chasing approval is a prison. It looks like connection, but it feels like anxiety. It promises belonging, but demands you abandon yourself. And that's not peace, that's performance. You don't need to shapeshift for acceptance. You don't need to broadcast your life to feel valuable. You don't need a standing ovation to know your worth. The most powerful version of you is the one who knows who they are, even when no one is clapping, the one who can sit in silence and still feel strong, the one who chooses authenticity over attention. Because here's what people forget. Approval is temporary. It shifts with trends. It disappears when you stop entertaining others. But inner peace, that's eternal, if you protect it. When you choose inner peace over outer applause, you no longer have to explain your decisions. You no longer feel the urge to convince others to agree with your path. You no longer break your own boundaries to keep people comfortable. You simply live freely, fully, without permission. And that kind of life, it confuses people who are still enslaved to opinions. They'll say you've changed. They'll say you're distant. They'll say you're cold. Let them misunderstand you. Let them draw their conclusions. Let them whisper while you rise in silence. Because when your life becomes rooted in peace, you no longer need validation. You become validation. You no longer chase acceptance. You attract respect. You no longer try to fit in. You stand out by just being you. So stop explaining your peace to people who are addicted to chaos. Stop defending your healing to people who benefit from your brokenness. Stop over-explaining your silence to those who only understand noise. You don't owe anyone an explanation for becoming who you were always meant to be. Remember this: your peace is your power. Your calm is your clarity, and your silence is your sovereignty. Protect it. Don't trade your internal stability for temporary acceptance. Don't let the loudness of others drown out the truth of your soul. The world may not always understand your silence, but it will respect the strength it took to choose it. Let that be enough. Let the silence speak for you. There comes a point on your journey when you stop needing words to prove who you are, because your life speaks louder than anything you could ever say. That's the ultimate level of mastery. When your silence is louder than their noise, when your calm disturbs their chaos, when your presence shifts a room before you open your mouth. You get there not by being louder, not by explaining harder, not by defending your every move. You get there by growing in silence, by becoming so grounded in your purpose that nothing outside of you can shake it. Because silence isn't emptiness, it's essence, it's alignment, it's power under control. There's an old saying, a lion doesn't need to roar to prove it's a lion, and neither do you. You've been conditioned to believe that silence means weakness, that if you don't defend yourself, you're losing, that if you don't explain yourself, people will get the wrong idea. Let them. Let them guess. Let them misunderstand. Let them write their own story while you live your truth. Because real ones don't need to be told what you're about. They feel it, they see it, they respect it without needing to hear a single word. Every time you choose silence over argument, you preserve your energy. Every time you walk away instead of reacting, you protect your peace. Every time you let your growth speak for itself, you remind the world, your actions are your voice. And that voice, it never needs to shout. It shows up in your consistency, in the way you carry yourself, in the results no one can deny. Think about it. The most transformative seasons of your life, the breakthroughs, the pivots, the glow-ups, didn't happen when you were talking. They happened when you were grinding, reflecting, healing, choosing silence and solitude over validation and applause. So don't trade your progress for petty approval. Don't shrink your silence to satisfy noisy minds. Don't break your peace to prove your point. Let them say what they want. Let them assume what they will. Let them talk while you transform. Because when it's all said and done, the truth rises, the discipline becomes visible, the legacy becomes undeniable, and the loudest thing in the room will be the life you built in silence. Let the silence speak. Let the work talk, and let the noise pass you by. Silence is no longer just a choice, it is your strength. Throughout this journey, we've explored how silence isn't about retreating, avoiding, or hiding. It's about owning your space. It's about walking in such deep alignment with your purpose that you no longer need outside approval to validate your internal peace. When you stop explaining yourself, something powerful happens. You reclaim control. You stop bleeding energy into conversations that don't deserve your spirit. You stop inviting noise into spaces that were meant for growth, reflection, and resilience. You begin to build in silence, heal in silence, move in silence. And the irony is, that's when people begin to notice. Because nothing is louder than a person who no longer needs to speak to be understood. Nothing is more powerful than someone who doesn't react to everything thrown at them. Nothing commands more respect than a person who can smile, nod, and move forward without a single word to defend their path. This world wants noise. It thrives on reactions. It feeds off outrage and explanation. But that is not your path. Your path is focus. Your path is clarity. Your path is silent evolution. So the next time you feel tempted to explain your piece, remember, you are not responsible for other people's comfort with your boundaries. You are not obligated to make your process digestible to those who've never had the courage to start their own. And you are not here to prove anything to anyone. You are here to grow, to expand, to live fully and freely without justification. Because true confidence is quiet, real power is subtle, and deep peace doesn't shout, it simply is. Let others talk, let them guess, let them misunderstand. That's none of your business. Your business is staying grounded. Your business is protecting your energy. Your business is becoming so aligned with your truth that don't flinch when someone tries to rattle you. And if they can't hear your silence, let them listen to your results. Because in the end, your life, how you live, how you love, how you rise, will always speak louder than your explanations ever could. So walk on, silently, steadily, unapologetically. Let the noise fade behind you. Let the peace rise within you, and let your silence say everything that words never could. Final words: you don't need to explain your greatness. You don't need to defend your peace. You don't need to speak to be respected. Live in such a way that silence becomes your signature, and the world will listen, even when you say nothing at all.